Hey there everybody, in this video we're going to be providing a little bit of commentary on the Phantom 5 rumors we've been seeing and hearing so much about. So first off, I did just get that promotion recently. It hasn't quite kicked into effect, but it will soon. So that I was talking about hoping to get a few videos ago. So let me know which I should pick up first, the Tamron 2875 or the A7 III. I think I'm gonna go with the A7 III because I'm just in love with that camera and I'm so looking forward to getting back into full frame. But we're here to talk about the Phantom 5, and the Phantom 5 is really cool for a couple of different reasons. I want to dive into kind of the relationships surrounding the Phantom 5 so that we can kind of understand this. We can all be on the same page as we're striving to understand this together. So first off, DJI purchased Hasselblad, a medium format camera manufacturer, not too long ago, within the last 3 years, I believe. And what we've seen since then is the X7, I believe, for the Inspire 2. Now, what that is an APS-C sensor, Super 35 sensor, with interchangeable lenses that are, you know, really cool, carbon fiber, all that. Now, what we're seeing out of the Phantom 5 is also an interchangeable lens camera. That kind of depth of engineering ability to pop out lenses can only come from a dedicated camera manufacturer. So this is probably one of the things that Hasselblad is good for in that relationship now. Critically though, it's probably Sony who's making these sensors. They're probably going to be backside illuminated, on sensor phase detect, autofocus, all this sort of stuff. And you can tell that because on the first hand, Sony's making most of the CMOS sensors in the market right now, from what I understand. And on the other hand, or the other finger in this case, because the way that DJI has kind of set their products up, right? They've been using Sony sensors. So they've been using that slightly larger than smartphone sensor for just a minute. DJI Mavic Air has that. I'm really happy with that sensor, but I still yet am pining after that 1-inch type sensor. It's not actually a 1-inch, but it's called a 1-inch type sensor that's in the Phantom 4 Pro. Now, the Phantom 4 Pro is the first 1-inch type sensor, 1-inch type sensor, yes, that's correct, to be on a prosumer device, a prosumer drone, right? So what we're seeing is very quick acceleration from 1-inch type sensor prosumer drone to interchangeable lens prosumer drone. Now what we're seeing out of this is also segmentation, because that Phantom 4 Pro is not going to go away anytime soon. Not at least the way it's not the Plus, because it looks like from the images that we can see right now that the Phantom 5 will also have that Plus integrated screen into the controller dealie. Where Sony comes into this is that if DJI, with Hasselblad's help for those lenses, can really leverage the way that Sony makes sensors, the Phantom 5 has the very reasonable potential to be, for 90% of users, as good as an Inspire 2 with their highest end setup on it, right? Most users aren't going to need 5.7K RAW, and I would argue that 90+% of users aren't. So that's kind of where that's coming from. But when you also think that Sony does a great job of super sampling, their sensors are very detailed, very precise, what you're going to start realizing is that the gains in terms of like a DJI Mavic Air sensor to a Phantom 4 Pro to a Phantom 5 sensor are not going to be a linear representation of sensor size, right? With dynamic range and ISO performance, especially not with these interchangeable lenses. So I think that we can reasonably state that this Phantom 5 is going to be like the biggest beast in terms of an aerial imaging platform, right? That's not entirely absurd to think. Hey, if you've made it this far, please let me know what you're thinking about the Phantom 5 and how wrong I might be in that comment section right below the like button. Kind of to bounce around with this, some of the other stuff that we're seeing about is, you know, aluminum body with plastic in a little bit different places, and the venting holes placed in slightly different places for weatherproofness, so that like if it's raining, you can still fly safely without fear of your drone like getting water damaged and then falling out of the sky, which would be great. But I think that what we got to think about very seriously is that flight time as well. So as soon as you start integrating interchangeable lenses, it's going to be very difficult to keep that gimbal as rock solid as it is when you have a gimbal for like a Mavic Air, Mavic Pro, even the Phantom 4 Pro, because that is it is always the same. So when we're thinking about flight time and gimbal performance, it should be fairly obvious that we're talking about the two biggest drains on battery, right? It's recording and encoding, and the gimbal, so the camera all wrapped up into one there, and then actually powering the flight. Obviously, powering the flight will probably take up most of the battery, but in encoding, balancing that gimbal constantly, I mean all the time, going to soak up a huge amount of battery. So that's going to be a challenge that I'm fairly confident is going to be overcome by some really excellent engineering out of Hasselblad, DJI, Hasselblad, whoever you want to call it. And the way that they're going to do that is by having each of those lenses being as close as humanly possible, or as robotically possible, I'm not sure how they're manufacturing these lenses, to be the same size and weight. And that's why they went with f2.8 lenses in the rumors that we've been seeing, because it's a lot easier to control an f2.8 lens, a control for an f2.8 lens on that size sensor than it is for a 1.8 lens or a 1.4 lens. The brighter that maximum aperture, the bigger and heavier that lens is going to have to become. And so by keeping those limited, it might increase your depth of field a huge amount, but the upside is that it's a more consistent weight and image quality, so that you will get the best flight performance that you can get, because that gimbal isn't going to have to be working so hard with different lenses. The way that DJI has implemented that interchangeable lens system for their Inspire 2 gimbal, which I believe is the X7, if I'm wrong, correct me, is really cool, right? Carbon fiber all the way around. It's very, I mean, the full set of primes, it's very neat. What it's looking like we're going to be seeing out of the Phantom 5 as well is that full suite of primes. Now, I really highly doubt that any individual user is going to need all of them on any given day, but I imagine that it will be very fun to play with, and I also imagine that this is a fantastic way for DJI to increase revenue while not having to put out too many more units. And that's a key thing in the current marketplace, right? Because you need to be able to increase revenue while you're also recognizing the fact that you're never going to output as many units as you used to be able to. So by putting an interchangeable lens camera on their drone, DJI is segmenting their market further so that they can be more profitable. And that's not something that I'm going to say or support too often, right? I oftentimes say, oh, Canon, I wish you wouldn't segment too much. And I say it much harsher than that, but I'm trying to become a little bit more centrist in my old age, in my dotage. But when you think about it from a drone manufacturer's perspective, right, instead of a traditional camera manufacturer, they don't have the same depth. They don't have the same lens catalog to fall back on, and they're never going to. The point is not to develop a really deep lens catalog, it's to make one-offs for these drones. And that, on the one hand, sounds like a great idea, and on the other, like a terrible idea, because, you know, you can have a lot of you can have very expensive add-on lenses that really increase the price of this thing, or it's going to cost a lot more to be able to make these almost one-off type lenses. On the flip side, if these are very similar to the lenses that we're seeing on DJI's other gimbal with the Super 35 sensor, that's going to mean something very special, and that is that they are going to be able to cut costs. And so either they're going to be able to increase their revenue, or they're going to be able to offer them at a lower price point. And I think that it's critical that they do price this well, right? The Phantom 4 Pro is right around $1,500. I think it's a little bit more if it's the Pro Plus. The Inspire with that whole camera setup easily is going to hit $8,000 or $10,000. In my opinion, they need their Phantom 5 with the lenses to come in closer to 3.5, because that's the target market that they're missing out on. There's no one, in my opinion, that can get an Inspire that would get a Phantom 4 Pro if it's for very serious filmmaking, right? But a Phantom is going to be a much better tool for the average filmmaker because it's much more portable. And so for those users that can't quite afford an Inspire, that can't quite justify lugging that kind of thing around, this is going to be a fantastic step in the right direction, because although it's not a Super 35 sensor, a traditional sensor, it is interchangeable lens, so they can have that crucial element, control. Filmmaking in a lot of ways is all about control, and photography as well. So adding that level of control for the end user means that DJI can bump the price, and it will be justified. And they're going to draw a lot of users that are buying Mavic Airs or Phantom 4 Pros because of that value proposition into that system. So they won't have to have a 6K sensor. They won't have to have 4K 120, although they very well could, because at their rate, I wouldn't put anything past them. But they can fundamentally offer the same experience as a Phantom 4 Pro, just with this interchangeable lens piece, and generate a lot more revenue for themselves and generate a lot better images and videos for their customers. So I'm very interested. I really hope you've made it this far. If you have, thank you so much for your time and for your attention. Please go ahead and let me know what you think about the Phantom 5 right beneath that like button. Go ahead and check out those affiliate links while you're at it. I really appreciate your time and your attention, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.